Welcome to Learning Impact on Demand 2020, Solutions for Highly Effective Digital Teaching and Learning in Response to the Accelerated Move to Remote Education. At IMS Global Consortium, we believe in the power of dynamic collaboration as a catalyst for digital innovation and transformation in education. In this spirit, we're bringing together leaders in our community representing top learning institutions and ed tech suppliers to share knowledge and ideas for reimagining the educational experience and to explore new opportunities for shaping the future of teaching and learning. Today's topic is responsive practices to plan your virtual instruction. My name is Monica Watts, and I'm Director of K-12 Engagement at IMS Global. Let me introduce you to our panelists today. Dwayne Alton, Executive Director, Infrastructure Services, Lee County Schools. Welcome, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Dr. Helen Davis-Martin, Assistant Director, Professional Learning, Lee County Schools. Hi, Helen.
Hi, thank you.
And Rob Stratton, VP of Learning, Innovation, and Strategy at Safari Montage. Hi, Rob.
Good morning, Monica.
Good morning. So I'm really excited about our panelists today, as I've had the pleasure of knowing them for many years, and they're very much respected, and I know we're going to provide a lot of insight on this topic. Before we begin, a little background for today and to set the tone for the discussion. When coronavirus-related restrictions swept the globe in March, every district had to migrate their functions to a remote environment. In some scenarios, this was emergency learning. However, in the case of Lee County, they had a head start for many years in building their ecosystem and preparing for virtual instruction. So Dwayne, why don't we start off by laying the landscape and outlining the digital learning ecosystem of Lee County Schools for everyone listening.
We began this journey about 6 or 7 years ago and built a very robust digital ecosystem to provide anywhere, anytime, any device learning. We have a single sign-on solution from ClassLink that acts as our gateway into our ecosystem. It also provides us the one roster integration into all of our other applications. So we roster our staff and students into all of the various applications. And behind the scenes, we have our learning object repository, which is where all of our content lives. So whether it's self-created content or from various manufacturers, we bring all of that into our Safari Montage lore using the thin common cartridge standard. We also interface, obviously, the students interface and the teachers interface with our learning management system, which in our district is Google Classroom. So it's a very simplified learning management system. And we also, for our professional development, have the Blackboard Learn platform that we use for an LMS over there. So we have all of this tied together, of course, with our student information system, and the data works seamlessly between the applications. We have one roster syncing all of our rosters. We have thin common cartridge so that the content that lives in our learning object repository can be easily assigned over to our LMS with just a couple of clicks. And we've also used LTI to integrate a lot of the services, not only single sign-on, but to pass data back and forth between applications. And then finally, we have been working closely with Caliper Analytics to bring, to really surface our usage data and progress data from our various content providers so that the teachers and now our professional development team can monitor progression through learning paths or playlists, as we call them. So the design here, of course, was originally around the teacher-student instructional use case. But as we are going to talk about today, this came into play as we moved into a need to transition to a robust digital professional developed ecosystem. So our system is designed around both those use cases now, and actually made a huge difference in our transition from face-to-face instruction and face-to-face professional development over to the digital world.
Great. So question for Dwayne and Helen. Let's go back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you faced when trying to work outside of your ecosystem.
Back in the beginning, things were very messy. So to give you an idea of what our life looked like before we had this ecosystem, we would provide teachers these sheets of the various resources and applications, tell them what they had to use to log into the application. It was just mass confusion. And we spent all of our PD time not doing professional development, but doing mechanics training. Basically, we spent all of our time teaching them how to access the systems, not how to use the content. We didn't get to spend a lot of time on instructional model. It was all, how do you get to your stuff? So from, you know, a broad perspective, with our instructional ecosystem, it seriously transitioned from a focus on how to access things to how do we use these tools and how do we use the content to, you know, differentiate instruction? How do we track student progress now that we've moved from a face-to-face model to a digital model where we differentiate for different students, right? So all of the pieces, before we had no way to do that with our electronic assets.
So could you tell us, Helen or Dwayne, talk a little bit more about how you were able to integrate all of that digital content from multiple publishers and providers into one platform?
Like I said, we literally have, I think the last count, it was over 75 content providers. And some of that is purchased licensed content. Some of it is free or open source content. And we've, you know, so all along, you know, the big challenge was, how do we get that in one place for teachers? So we've worked very closely, you know, our content providers worked very closely with us, as well as our platform providers. So what we did is we worked with Safari Montage, we worked directly with IMS, and we worked with ClassLink, all to help those content providers get there, right? So everyone was in a different place when we started down this path years ago. And to say that it took a little nudging would be an understatement. We essentially set deadlines and said, this is what you have to do if you want to do business with Lee County. So, but we did it, you know, we tried to do it in a collaborative way. We invested resources. IMS certainly invested resources. Safari Montage invested resources, and ClassLink too. You know, everybody jumped in and said, we need to build this so that it is as seamless as humanly possible. So I think that the content integration piece was, you know, 2 years of grinding, both internally and with our partners. The great thing is that we work with partners that go well beyond the scope of, you know, just the services that we use on a day-to-day basis, right? Safari and ClassLink spend a lot of time on this. And I think that, you know, when you're choosing your partners, you have to be very careful, and because you can't scope everything that you're going to do. And I think that they spend a great deal of time. We had custom development on their part. They've always jumped in to help us provide feedback to IMS on the standards and help it evolve. So these are true partners, and you'll often hear us differentiate between the term partner and vendor, right? Vendor is somebody who sells us something. A partner is somebody that is helping us along with our journey. So I think that partnership was extremely important, and that's how we got that there. Now, along with that, as we roll into this school year, we also have seen a huge uptick in self-created content, right? Especially with teachers that traditionally, for example, we've had teachers that have used our various assets over the years, but with this transition, wanted to supplement some of that content that we have already licensed in our lore, and we've seen a huge uptick in that. So because we wanted to make that seamless, again, we provided the instruction, and our PD team provided the instruction on how to take that content, get it into Safari, and then we could deliver that content along with everything else, right? Alongside that, you know, the PD team had to create a lot of content, because we are now taking what I would say are non-traditional groups that we normally work with digitally and bringing them into this ecosystem. So they had to also build that, and then they brought that into Safari Montage as well.
Yeah, that's great. So you're continuously nurturing that ecosystem as we go. Helen, with so many teachers and staff working from home, not only are you adapting to remote learning for the students in this environment, but additionally supporting the teachers' PD needs as well. The challenge is, how do you continue to provide robust professional development during these current times? And really the question, how do you do that?
onboarding 6,000 teachers to virtual learning in about a week definitely presented a challenge for our PD team. But as Dwayne described, a lot of our ecosystem was already built around supporting teachers, supporting students, and a lot of the tools that we have and the partners that we have through Google Classroom, through Safari are already in place, and our teachers have a foundational understanding of it. So we were able to quickly organize, reorganize, adapt, adjust, and deliver that content to our teachers in a remote work environment to help them feel successful and prepared to take on that work in a very short period of time. The real challenge emerged for us when we had the opportunity to offer professional learning as a remote option for 2,000 members of our support staff group. So that group includes transportation, that includes food service, that includes school-based custodians and secretaries and paraprofessionals. And the goal of the superintendent was to offer them remote professional learning opportunities during school closures so that they didn't receive any negative impact on their pay and that they still remain employees in the organization. So our team in professional development is small and mighty. There are 13 of us for 13,000 employees. And most of our work, just by demand, really deals with teachers on a day-to-day basis. We hire about 500 to 700 new teachers every year. So a lot of our time and effort are focused on that. So with this opportunity to present at least 8 weeks of remote work through professional development to our support staff, what we really wanted to do was make sure that the PD they were experiencing was timely to what was happening, was relevant to their role, and then was also really connected with some of our overarching district goals and initiatives. So first things first, there's that first emergency when you have a week to create a plan for something. So during that first week, we utilize some platforms that we really don't have strong partnerships with through the district. And then that left our participants feeling helpless and frustrated because they couldn't access the content, they couldn't download it. It left our team feeling overwhelmed with help tickets that we couldn't respond to. And we were frustrated as well because the most we could tell them, because it wasn't part of our ecosystem, was, just try hitting refresh, try it again later, reset your password, use Google Chrome. So we quickly learned that we needed to work within our ecosystem in order to make this work successful. So one of the pieces that we did right away was we kind of took a look at what were some of the requests we had from our different district departments, from our principals, from our support staff themselves for professional learning. And they all said across the board, right, that their support staff really could utilize some training in technology. So we leveraged that felt need with the felt need of working remotely, with the need also to bring the skill set of our support staff up. To utilize Google Chrome, Google Suites, and Microsoft Office, and then build and deliver that content for them through Safari. And that was really popular, and that was really well received. So we wanted to continue down that thread of offering relevant and timely PD to our staff. And we know as a whole, our organization is committed to continuous improvement in quality tools. So we offered and built training for our support staff in that area. So they all had a foundational understanding and were speaking the same language. And then mental health literacy is something that's big on the minds of everyone in education. It has been for a couple of years, but the need felt even greater during the time of school closures due to the pandemic. And we know as an organization that although our workforce that experiences PD, they may not use those tools on a day-to-day basis. They may not always interact with kids every single day for long periods of time like our teachers do, but they have an impact on student success. And if they feel they have the tools and resources to be successful, not only will it impact their attention and their longevity in the organization, but the kids they do come across on day-to-day have a greater likelihood of being successful as well.
So specifically, you discussed human resources and the professional development department. Dwayne and Helen, what are some of the considerations that were top of mind that you had to consider when it comes to supporting those two departments?
Well, I think one of the considerations when you're looking at the IMS standards is that typically people don't roster their support staff. And so part of the challenge was making sure that we had the support staff into our applications, as well as our instructional staff and school administrators. So that was a big piece that we had to look at. Other thing is that most of these support staff that were participating had never used this ecosystem before. So we did have to, look at that. We also, and honestly, when I talk about any device, anywhere, anytime type instruction, that was it. We had some staff that were on site at a district location that had a district device. We had some that are at home on a home PC. We have others that are on their phones. And so that was one of those challenges that I think that we all face when we talk about transitioning to remote PD, because even though our teachers have a district device and our administrators have a district device, most of our support staff are not assigned a personal, an individual laptop. So those were some of the considerations we had to work through, is how to make sure that everything was working properly across platforms. And so I think that, internally created content is super easy to do that, because we're delivering that through Safari, and Safari will adapt the content to the device and the amount of bandwidth you have and things like that. But obviously, when you're using licensed content, some of that doesn't necessarily translate as well. So you had to work through some of those issues.
And to speak to the needs of the professional development team, so our team is very used to delivering content in person to our audience and our participants, just out of level of comfort. One thing that we had to do right away to make this initiative and this project successful was build up the skill set of the PD team right away to design and deliver content virtually. We had started that work with Rob at Safari Montage in March, and some of us had kind of foundational understanding of it prior to that. But then through the partnership of his organization, we were able to quickly bring the whole staff up to speed and give them the skill sets they needed to build that content and create playlists, and then push it out to our support staff as well.
Dwayne, you mentioned working with staff and any device, anywhere. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the lessons that you learned when it comes to internet connectivity and bandwidth?
We, going into the transition with the students, we had anticipated we were going to have connectivity issues. We have students without home internet. What I was surprised by was the number of staff that, including teachers, that don't have broadband internet connections at home, and for various reasons, either financial or there are still some areas in Lee County that you cannot get wireline broadband. So I think that was one of the big surprises of all this, is that while we were planning for addressing that with students, we had not planned to address that for staff. So we had to adapt pretty quickly with that and provide some connectivity for some of the staff. But even that, what we could provide was limited. So we had to prioritize, who got those devices. So for some of the people that did not get a mobile hotspot from us, for example, maybe their phone is their only connectivity at home. And the connection may be fast, may be, pretty bad. We also, because we have a lot of staff that are on limited plans, right? Most of your major carriers removed caps for data usage and things like that. However, a lot of your prepaid carriers and MVNOs did not. So, we did run into that, where people were using their data allotments. So and those are some of the things that we continue to struggle with, because now that some of the carriers are transitioning away from the level of generosity they had during the beginning of the COVID situation, we have to take that into account moving forward, because we have pushed back our school start time, or school start date, and we also have, because we are in a hybrid situation, we have a lot more PD to do, because we are returning to an environment that is different than what we left. not just what we left before spring break, but that last quarter we were fully virtual. Now we're going into a hybrid situation. So there's a lot of PD to continue, and we have to overcome those connectivity challenges and provide options for people to make sure that they do get the training, because it's critical as we transition.
And one of the pieces we learned on the professional development side was not to assume anything, to really make sure that what we were providing to our participants and what we continue to provide to our participants has short little videos and instructions and reminders of how to log in, and that all the content is test driven by our staff members in advance of whatever we roll out on multiple devices, because many of our laptops and Chromebooks were distributed to students. And as Dwayne said, our staff, you couldn't assume that they had them at home, and you couldn't assume that they had an internet connection at home. So it really forced our team to experience all the PD through a user experience as well, which in turn made it stronger, and will continue.
Rob, let's bring your perspective in on this. How important was it for the district to establish a platform to leverage a seamless experience as possible for the teachers and students?
Well, as you heard from Dwayne and Helen, the importance of having this robust ecosystem, it's extremely important that the district at least is thinking about how they're going to meet the needs of their teachers and students and all users. And whether they are in their infancy of moving down that road of developing a well-evolved ecosystem, or they're fully evolved out, you know, it's important for us to be able to come into that ecosystem and support them where they are. One of the things that we think about is when we come into their ecosystem, we're looking to be collaborators with all of their other partners and not competitors in that space. You know, you won the market when you got there. Now you need to play nice with everybody that's there. And that's really, for us, our goal is to support them in their vision and help them build out that ecosystem.
Let's talk a little bit about analytics and the work that you have done in that regard. Helen, how are teachers utilizing analytics to track their progress when it comes to virtual learning?
So teachers are very used to using the analytics that we have available through our district resources in the district to track the progress of their students. So to see date and time stamps of when their students submitted work, to give them timely feedback on their assignments, as well as see their progress towards a standards progression over time. So just as they expect that for their students, they expect that for their own professional learning as well. They want to know that what they've completed, they've earned credit for in real time. And then they also want to see how they are progressing towards their own personal professional learning goals, and then also how they're doing in comparison to others towards those other professional learning goals. And that's an area that we continue to kind of grow and evolve in to help provide them with kind of standards for their professional learning, and then also helping them kind of check in to see where they are in relationship to those standards.
Dwayne, tell us a little bit about how this data that you're gathering demonstrates the return on your investment.
Obviously, when we talk about return on investment, you know, we're heading into a couple of bad budget years, we anticipate. So we do need to show usage data, and we do need to demonstrate the value of our various platforms. And I think that the analytics, both from the PD side and from the teacher and student instruction, are critical, because a lot of times your platforms kind of sink into the background if we're doing it correctly, right? So people are often asking, well, what does this system do? And some people might be offended when they hear what does the system do. In reality, we want the platforms to sink into the background. So the analytics that we get from that allow us to show what those platforms are doing and establish the value that they bring to the district. And I think that the work that we've done over the last few years, we've spent a lot of time focusing on teacher-student interaction. This brought the PD side to the forefront, and we were able to very quickly demonstrate how much content was being delivered and how we can track the progress very quickly. And we, again, when we started this, the use case wasn't around PD, right? We had always used it for PD, but when we built our analytics, that wasn't really the use case. But now that we've seen that information is critical in a situation like this, where not only are we trying to demonstrate the value of the platform, but we're also trying to demonstrate that our support staff and those that are not on-site working are actually engaged and working for the district. It's incredibly important for us to use this data to also show that those staff members are productive, even in a remote environment. So we're showing more than just a return on investment on the platform, but we're also demonstrating that the platform is giving us the capability to keep people employed and to keep them productive and to ensure that they are ready for whatever the next transition is to our hybrid model or whatever the following semester looks like. So I think, as we build these analytics, we have a lot of things in mind we want to do around PD that are just going to be adapted from the work we've done with Caliper and that around the teacher-student analytics.
Helen, what are the future plans for virtual instruction and PD in Lee County Schools?
So as Dwayne had mentioned earlier, we are about to enter a school year in which students and teachers will have the option to engage in a hybrid model of learning. So a combination of face-to-face classroom instruction, as well as a combination of virtual instruction. So one of the implications for that, and I'm very grateful for, is that our school board recently approved a delayed start date for the school calendar for students. And then with that delayed start date also comes 9 days of in-service for our teachers. So as a professional development department, I mentioned before that we hire a large amount of new teachers each year, primarily due to student growth in our district. So we are in the midst of wrapping up 8 days of professional learning for our new teachers. We have 300 teachers participating in that, all virtually. And those 8 days of learning are really designed to give them tips, tricks, and tools to be successful with classroom management, student engagement, the basics of instructional technology within any classroom environment. So that's, one check mark we're taking off the list. And then we are quickly gearing up to onboard the rest of our teachers, about 6,000 of them, into professional development that will help them be successful in this upcoming hybrid environment as well. So paramount to that professional learning plan is really choice and voice, because our teachers, right, we have a large cohort of teachers that all participated in fully virtual instruction from March to the end of the school year. So I know coming into this school year, they're going to want to take it a step further. They're going to want more opportunities to take that advanced content, to tweak and adapt their instruction and make it stronger and better. But then also we have some teachers who, yes, they participated in virtual learning from March to June, but they never felt comfortable with it. So they want a refresher on their tools and skills. And then we have, again, this cohort of new teachers, and we hire a large amount of them from careers outside of education as well, who'll still need continued professional learning on the basics. So our PD will look like a menu and a checklist, a ICANN checklist for our teachers, where they'll have the opportunity to self-assess where they are and then connect themselves with the professional learning that they feel they need to be successful in this new environment. And our goal is just to keep getting better at getting better. With a small team, we rely a lot on survey data. We rely a lot on those analytics that Dwayne talked about to look at the usage of things to determine what's popular, what's needed, what's necessary, and then use that data in real time to continuously adapt our PD offerings to make sure that people have just-in-time PD.
Rob, how has Safari Montage as their partner worked to support the PD coordinators?
First of all, understanding their ecosystem was essential for us. And since we've been here since the beginning, we have a good understanding of the ecosystem. When we needed to onboard professional development, it was really just a simple shift of focus. Who's now the targeted student? It was teachers. And so we simply worked with the professional development coordinators and provided them, I would say literally maybe an hour refresher on here's how you add your resources, and gave them a quick tutorial And then we supported them through their development to give them some guidance on some best practices for displaying content. But after that, it was pretty much they were on their own, up and running, and you'll see the results, right? Over 217,000 plays coming from those professional development courses. And for us, it was a simple lift because the district had already embraced the ecosystem, and Safari Montage was partnering with them for their instructional components.
So a final question for all of you. What would be your recommendation for district leaders guiding their districts through a similar experience? Dwayne, let's start with you, then go to Helen, and finish with Rob.
Well, I think that the first thing is you have to prioritize whenever you're the task. The whole of the situation can seem enormous, and I think prioritizing the tasks to get there is incredibly important. You start with the basics, and when it comes to making sure that you have the ecosystem built, you're going to start with making sure that you've rostered properly. You've got your content in one place. But as they transition, I think you really have to, as you transition from a mostly face-to-face, which wasn't necessarily our world, but understanding a lot of districts are there, to a digital world, is that the teachers are going to need a lot of support. The staff will need a lot of support because we're dealing with unknowns in this situation, not just related to the content and to learning something new, but to the entire situation. So I think that having a rapid support model is important. I know that in our district, we had to pull in resources that we normally would not use in a support role for this type of work, to be available to support the staff, the students, and the parents, because they have to have a place to reach out directly. So you really have to put that structure in place at the beginning of this transition to make it work well.
And from the professional development lens, the advice I'd have to other district leaders would be to communicate and collaborate. As a department leader, I know how easy it is to get siloed and focused on your own work. But when you're dealing with professional learning, it really impacts all employees of the organization. It impacts your bus drivers, your food service workers, your support staff, your teachers, your administrators, and then your department and district administrators as well. So be sure to communicate with the other departments that you might touch or impact, or don't even realize that you touch or impact, about what you're planning for your work. And through that communication, it's a simple courtesy and customer service piece, because knowing that you're moving one piece, but it also moves a couple pieces for them. But through that communication, what I learned was that other departments, our district partners, our district vendors as well, have resources to help you, to collaborate, to make sure that you don't have to recreate the wheel and do it all on your own. That really, through that collective collaboration and communication, you're able to make your professional learning opportunities, how it's delivered, the experience for your participants, a lot stronger, because you've had multiple voices and multiple eyes on that opportunity. So communicate and collaborate would be key.
And then what I would add is, from a vendor's perspective, it's helpful for a district, for us, when districts are really founded in IMS standards and that they have this good foundation, that it really helps us come into the ecosystem. So I would strongly encourage districts, even if they haven't started yet, to really get themselves immersed in IMS. And typically what I would recommend is, let's look at your SSO solution and then look at rostering. One roster is the gateway standard for districts to start managing users, and then move into your platform providers where you're corralling your content so they can be used in a wide variety of ways. But the foundation is around those IMS standards. And in Lee County, you will see that the evolution of the ecosystem started just there, and they moved through each standard, and every time they needed a problem solved, they always went back to IMS. How do we do this? And that's the work that they're doing today with Caliper, addressing needs. So I would strongly encourage the immersion into IMS standards for districts. And I would also encourage that for vendors as well, for their partners, is, hold each other accountable around those standards. And when you're looking for the shortcut just to get something done, always come back to the IMS standard and say, let's build this right from the beginning, because it will get so much easier at the end.
Great points. So thank you to all of our panelists for your insight today. We look forward to hearing about your continued successes in the future. Thank you all.